Hellraiser Judgement was released in 2018, which kind of shocks me a little bit because my memory and recollection of it seemed to be a few years before that. I thought it was like 2010 to be honest. But yeah, 2018 indeed, and this is directed by a guy named well, it says 2016 here, but internet says 2018, and it's directed by Gary J. Tunnicliffe, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. He's a like professional makeup designer and makeup effects guy, and it definitely shows with this film because the Pinhead and the Cenobites and every character in this film definitely stand out. And I think Pinhead kind of takes a back seat when it comes to the other characters in this film, which I don't think is a bad thing at all. And they definitely showcase some new characters and really sinister, creepy ass looking characters in this film outside of Pinhead. Also, the guy who plays Pinhead in this film looks a lot better and portrays Pinhead a lot better than the last guy in Revelations, which, I mean, the complaints on that guy are just pretty endless. I liked the guy in here. He's what I can see a really definitive quality replacement for Doug Bradley if there's going to be one. This film opens up with it's such a good opening because it's kind of there's the credit scene that comes in like 12 minutes into it. So it's one of those films with like an extended long intro, and this is probably the most horrific Hellraiser movie, unless you're comparing it to the first film, which I mean, they're hard to compare because the first film has so much gore effects and blood, especially, but this one just has this really revolting, sick, twisted, like heavy imagination on like the most vile and disgusting things you can think of and put on screen with the characters and what the characters are doing. It's ridiculous. It really actually reminds me of Saw. The way the scenes are shot and executed, especially in that intro, but kind of throughout the film, it has a Saw feeling to it. I find like the graininess to it, the color palettes, and the situations that the characters, both the protagonist and antagonist, are put in, just had a Saw feel with the way it looks visually. But yeah, like, man, do I even want to begin how to explain how this film opens up? There's this character who I love. He's kind of like I called him. There's the assessor who assesses the victims, but before him, I just called him the recorder. He's the guy who takes notes, pretty much, and the victims, whoever comes about to him. I don't know how the characters in this film find this hell realm, where they are put in front of this judge or whatever you want to call him, and he's basically asking them to spill their sins essentially. So it opens up with this guy. He's a little bit of a pervert and targets children for disgusting things, and this character is making him kind of spill everything that he's done, kind of thing, like admit his sins essentially, and he's writing them all down. And afterwards, when the sins are written down on paper, this other guy called the assessor comes in, and he's a large dude who is really creepy himself, takes the papers, pours some children's tears on them, which is in like a little vial that looks like vinegar essentially. So it looks like he's making himself a paper and water salad. All right, and then he starts forking it into his mouth like eating like a pig and just like chewing it, and it's showing like close-ups of his saliva and drool and shit. Then he gets up and pukes into a funnel where the digested, chewed up paper that he vomited falls onto the floor, and then on the other side of the wall there's these topless women who are chained up, and they're rubbing the vomit on the floor, and then they are the ones who give the final verdict on whether the person is guilty or not. And then from there, the person, if they're guilty, which this guy is, gets taken into a separate room where this other Cenobite evil character comes in wearing a baby face mask, and he's also a large character, has a baby face mask. All of a sudden, he kind of morphs or transforms or kind of devolves, you could say, into this gimp character with like a gas mask over his head, like World War II style, but all black, and he's dressed head to toe in black, gimp style. And then he brings out these blades, which the blades look fantastic. They look so good, and starts like hacking the dude up. Um, it, it's so fucking weird. It's just it's really vile. It's really disgusting. Like they really the shit that whoever wrote this film came up with. I don't really I can't I don't know any films that go to this level, that go to this extreme. Like it's an extreme film. It's borderline like a lot of people toss that stupid term around, torture porn. Well, if you want to torture porn, this is torture porn. Like it's what it is, because you have the whole sexual element going on with it, as the Hellraiser films do, pain and pleasure and stuff. And this one just goes balls to the wall, no pun intended. Like fuck, man, like they really go for it in this one, especially in that intro. And then it turns into this kind of like seedy detective story, so we got more of the elements that we had in Hellseeker and Inferno. Recently I've been reading a lot of James Patterson books, and in James Patterson books they have to do with like detective stories too, and in a lot of them there's really interesting crime scenes. And there's really interesting crime scenes in this film. In one in particular, they go into like a children's playground, and there's these 4 jars of blood, which right before that crime scene investigation, there's a scene where this guy is literally like, it just shows this guy using a hacksaw on someone, and all you hear is screams like crazy, and everything is red in blood, and there's blood like spraying, and there's metal music playing. So again, we're going hardcore with the violence and the brutality in this movie. Both, it kind of does a good blend between like showing it on screen and leaving it to the imagination. They really blend it well in this film. And with the director being a makeup designer, he really has a very unique way of showing horrors visually with the characters and with the scenes themselves. And then, so there's that whole brutal murder going on, and then it goes to the children's playground, and there's these jars of blood from the victims and these hands that are severed, and they're holding things, and or like they're basically like holding onto stuff in front of the jars, kind of thing. And then the detective Christine, she pries one of the hands open, which it should be like pretty solid. She gets the hand open easily, and I don't think that's too realistic with a severed hand. I think it would be pretty damn stiff. However, it's holding an eyeball and a couple teeth, so it's like eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, kind of thing. And I like how the crime scenes look. Basically, it definitely feels like that noir detective film, just like some of the previous Hellraiser films felt. And we have a detective story. We have 2 agents named Carter, Sean Carter and David Carter, and they're working with this young woman named Christine, or Christina. I think it's Christine. And one of the detectives, Sean Carter, is older, and then David Carter is Christine's age. He looks like he's like maybe late 20s or something like that. Sean, the older guy, is having marital problems. He's very religious. They're bringing a lot of religious elements into this. Even at one point, Pinhead himself is like taking communion, or something that's supposed to represent communion. And the main character Sean is always going on about like only God will judge me, and he says this quite a few times in the film. And nobody can judge me but God, and God will judge the wicked and the good, or paraphrasing kind of thing. But he's always going on with that, and it's funny because he ends up as the villain and just starts. He's always talking about God, but then in the third act of the film, he completely goes villain mode, and he holds David and Christine hostage and is ready to throw them to Pinhead as sacrifices, kind of thing, because he realized that his wife is cheating with David, and he, I think, is wanting to throw her to the wolves too, or Pinhead in this situation. And the ending, like, this might be one of the most confusing Hellraiser films also, because when it came to the end, he forces David and Christine, the detectives, to open the puzzle box so he can sacrifice them to hell. But then some other characters, I don't know exactly what their names are, come. And apparently Sean was involved with he was sent to he's part of they bring in like a heavenly world in this too. So he was sent from the heavenly world to bring fear and God fearing stuff into Earth or something. If I'm getting it right, I don't know. I'm kind of trying to put the pieces together, but like I said, it's a confusing finale to this film, and even they throw another curveball where they Pinhead himself is punished, and they throw him to the back to Earth from the Hell realm as a mortal man to live out the rest of his years. So this film kind of introduced a new way to defeat Pinhead, essentially, because it ends with Pinhead mortal without pins all over his face, and he's just on the street begging. So it felt a little bit quick. It felt a little bit random, a lot random, I would say, and just a lot at once. And a lot of the pieces were kind of like, whoa, this is a lot going on at once. This is, to me, it doesn't bother me too much because this is purely style over substance, and I love that shit. I'm a style over substance guy. So visually, and just to experience something so horrific and unique, I mean, it's really damn good. And it's a step up from a lot of the other Hellraiser sequels, in my opinion, especially for how gutsy it is. Again, no pun intended. But just the character designs, like I said, that were brought into this film, I think a lot of them trump Pinhead. I think Pinhead really takes a back seat in this one, and they still utilize, but he's kind of he's there as he's kind of there on his throne, and we all know he's the leader and the master, and he's got the deep voice and everything. But I like how they gave the attention to new characters that actually look great. Because if they looked like shit, it wouldn't be as effective. But they actually look fantastic, all of them, and they're all so unique. It's like a freaking. Sometimes it feels like a haunted house filled with the best, scariest creatures, or not creatures, but villains, you could say, that there are. So although the story takes kind of less attention and more convoluted than some of the other stories going on in the other Hellraiser films, it makes up for it visually, and it feels more modern. It feels like a modern horror film that wasn't scared to or afraid to hold back, kind of thing. And I enjoyed it. I thought it was cool for that. So this is the second latest film other than the remake, which I have to find somewhere. I don't have a subscription to whatever it streamed on. Was it Peacock? It's streaming somewhere, and I don't have a subscription to it. And it was never released on physical media, so I'm gonna go have to either buy that film somewhere streaming or find it somewhere, but it might take a bit. I want to search for it a little bit, so it might be a bit before I review the remake, and it'll be a first time watch, so that'll be interesting. But yeah, as for the original franchise before the remake, this is the 10th and final one, and it's cool. Cool enough, anyway. But, I mean, don't eat and have a strong stomach. Take my advice seriously and everything I just said, like the explanation of that intro. If you got a weak stomach, and if you get grossed out easily, it's all gross out, and there's no, hint of comedicness to it. It's just dark and bleak and sinister as fuck, so keep that in mind. That's Hellraiser Judgment, though. Subscribe to Morgan Film Fan if you like to listen to my voice or if you like my film reviews. I'll be back with more soon, so stay tuned for those. Check out what's on the channel already. Stay tuned for what's coming. Until next review, have a good one. Take care and cheers.